Hi class, so now we'll look at the last section of Unit 5, which is solving, we kind of looked at this in Unit 4, but let's continue with solving um, trigonometric functions. So you can solve this definitely using graphs, and what you basically want to look for is where the intersects are. Okay, so like because this is set to equal 0, you want to see where you cross the x-axis, or you can do it algebraically. So I'll show you how to do this algebraically. Okay, so let's start with the first one here. So you've got 4 sine squared x minus 3 equal to 0. So the first thing you can do is move the 3 over. And so you can do that, and then you can divide both sides by 4. Okay, and then to get the answer here, what we want to do is we want to take the square root of both sides. Right, so that's going to give us sine x is equal to plus or minus root 3 over 2. Now, again, when you're trying to determine how you want to present your answers, like angles, should they be in degrees or radians, you look for the inequality. So here it mentions that it's your answer should be between 0 and 360 degrees. So what that tells you is we want to look at this in terms of degrees. And so when you take the inverse sine, you have to take the inverse sine of, so let's start, there's two possible answers here. So you have to take the inverse sine of positive root 3 over 2 and negative root 3 over 2. Okay, so when we do positive root 3 over 2, so we take the inverse of that, that's going to equal 60 degrees. Okay, and so remember, when you're talking about sine, what we're talking about is opposite over hypotenuse, and your opposite is a y value. And because this is positive, there's two potential answers here, right? So just going back to the graph we looked at the last unit, this is an angle of 60 degrees. This is also an angle of 60 degrees. Okay, and so this angle here is going to be 120 degrees. So you have two answers. You have 60 and 120 degrees. And then when we do the other one, it's going to be negative 60 degrees. So this is the inverse of negative root 3 over 2. And that's going to give you negative 60 degrees. Okay, and so negative 60, so if we make another drawing here, negative 60 can be there or on that side, the left side or the right side. So that's going to give you two angles here, which are, one is going to be 240, and the other one's going to be 300. Okay, so you're going to get answers of 60, 120, 240, and 300. Okay, when you get your answers, make sure they are within that inequality. Okay, so this question said between 0 and 360, so those are our angles that are between 0 and 360. Okay, 60, 120, 240, and 300. Now, another way to frame the question is not to have an inequality, and which means you can give an infinite number of answers, and that's where they phrase it this way and say solve for the general solution. Okay, and again, it's about figuring out, are we going to be working in degrees or radians? So whenever you see pi in the question, that means we're going to be working in radians. So it's really important that you're able to kind of go back and forth in terms of your mode on your calculator. So here what we got is so 6 sine pi over 4. Now this question here is structured a little bit differently. So I'll show you how to deal with that pi over 4. So this is, we can move the 8 over, so it's 10 minus 8. And so we get 6 sine pi over 4x equal to 2. And then you can divide both sides by 6. And so now what we get, and this is kind of a new step here. So how do you get rid of the sign that's in front of the pi over 4x? Okay, so that's what we kind of want to do. So if that was a square root, we would square it, right? So whenever you're trying to get rid of something, what you're basically doing is you're taking the opposite operation. So what we're going to do here is the opposite operation of sine is inverse sine. So if you go inverse sine of sine, then you just have to make sure you do that on the other side as well. Okay, so what's going to happen here is this inverse sine is going to cancel out the sine. Okay, and so that just leaves you pi over 4x. Okay, so pi over 4x is going to be equal to the inverse sine of 1/3 in the radian mode. And so that's going to give you 0.32719, and then we can figure out what x is. That's going to be equal to 0.32719, and we can just multiply this by 4 and divide it by pi, and that'll give you 0.4166. Okay, so again, make sure that you're in the radian mode. And so now what we want to do is provide a general solution. So how do you provide a general solution? This is one answer. The way you do this is you have to figure out what the period is. So remember, the period, this is from the previous unit when we talked about the transformations, is equal to 2 pi divided by b. So if you go back and look at the equation here, the b term is going to be pi over 4. Okay, so what we do then is we've got 2 pi divided by pi over 4, which is going to equal 8. Okay, and that's 8 radians. Okay, so 8 radians is your period. And so to give a general solution then, that's going to be the one answer we had, plus 8 times n, where n is basically an integer. So like n can be 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. And this is what we call a general solution. Okay. All right, so I'll stop there, and now you can work on the corresponding questions.